Welcome back. This is the podcast, It's Not Easy Being Green, episode 5. Scott Fegler, congressional candidate of New Jersey. This is a podcast dedicated to exposing the real facts behind the green, or as I like to say, the green energy movement. I'm your host, Dominique. We have Christine, our subject matter researcher, and we have Eddie, our producer behind the cameras. Today we have a special guest, Scott Fegler, who is running to represent New Jersey's 6th congressional district against incumbent Democrat Frank Pallone Jr., who, by the way, has been in that seat since 1993. Scott is a native of Central New Jersey. Yes, Central New Jersey does exist, specifically Monmouth County. Funny enough, Scott and I were on the same bus going to our high schools. He went to Christian Brothers Academy, and I went to Red Bank Catholic. I digress. And as mentioned, he is running for the congressional seat of District 6. He's campaigning on protecting democracy, preserving the Jersey coastline from the proliferation of wind turbines, and ensuring sound energy policies that are to remain intact. He's very concerned about the affordability of gas and food and believes in truly representing the working man. Furthermore, he believes everyone has the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Scott, welcome to our podcast.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure having you. So it's such a small world, right? Me and you were on the same bus going to high school.
Incredible.
I know, it's amazing. So people might be wondering why two ladies from Putnam or Westchester County have an interest in your election. But I'll tell you this. Number one, we're hoping to reach any friends or family that may live in your district. Me specifically, my family does live in your district. And also, we'll discuss in the show, but one of Scott's platforms is to protect the Jersey Shore, which ultimately is about protecting and collaborating with others to protect the eastern seaboard, marine life, and our fishing industry. So let's start by having you talk about the federal government's plans for the New Jersey coastline, or as we say it, down the shore. So can you start by informing us about the federal government plans for the New Jersey coastline?
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, we talk a lot about this in New Jersey, and there are 190 proposed wind turbines off the coast of New Jersey alone. But that is just a drop in the bucket compared to what's going to occur on the entire East Coast. So they're planning offshore wind from Virginia all the way up to Maine. Some of that's already in existence, right? Off Cape Cod and Nantucket has some. But yeah, these are 9 stories tall monstrosities that'll be just under 9 miles off our coast. So really frightening stuff, especially when you start getting into the weeds of what's occurring and what's occurring on a daily basis. I think we had 2 whales wash ashore just this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So really scary stuff. And it's not a state thing, it's a federal thing. This is their attempt to greenwash us here on the East Coast.
Absolutely. So why is wind power so heavily subsidized by taxpayer money? Is wind an efficient, cost-effective energy source?
No, right. I think our friends over in Europe use a lot of wind energy, right? And if you guys have been over there, you've seen the prices of energy. Look, I'm a food importer by day, politician by night, and I deal with a lot of manufacturing plants over in Europe. And the costs that we've seen with their energy specifically has really jumped significantly over the last couple of years as they move more and more into offshore wind. This will likely have the same effect for us. So there's estimates that when the offshore wind hits New Jersey, our utility bills will increase about 40%. So it is not economically friendly and is definitely not environmentally friendly. Right, and they talk a lot about job creation is going to occur in the wind industry. I would find that actually as a net negative because of the tourism industry here in New Jersey that'll directly be hit, as well as the fishing industry. So I see no positives to offshore wind whatsoever.
Yeah. I mean, I think you just showed me an article too about Ontario right now, right? It's 2 to 3 cents per megawatt.
Per megawatt before their wind turbines went in, and now for 20 years it's guaranteed at 13 cents per kilowatt hour.
And that's the problem right now. One of the main issues is about affordability. So can you imagine people are struggling now, how people would struggle, right? If they were to really implement this. It's crazy. So what have you learned about the environmental effects of industrial-sized wind development on the ocean environment? These industrial-sized wind developments are large wind turbines that are installed at industrial facilities that produce power directly to the facility. These projects operate in parallel to the grid. So can you tell me what you've learned about the environmental effects from these wind turbines?
Yeah. So, right now, right, they're still going through the vetting process and the creation of implementing all of this. So what they do is they take boats out at sea and they use sonar activity to determine where essentially the turbines are going to go. Right, they're kind of mapping the seaboard floor. So right off the bat, the sonar activity is disastrous for the marine life. That's really why we're seeing all the whales wash ashore, the dolphins, et cetera, right? If you consider that a marine animal, their hearing is amplified by 10 or whatnot in water, and then you start pounding sonar in that air, these guys are going deaf, right, which is disorienting them. And then they're, running into boats or whatnot when usually they would be, alert with their full hearing potential. So that right off the bat is disastrous. So yeah, it's really frightening.
How about you kind of touched on it a little bit. Could you talk about the turbine failure that happened in Nantucket with the Vineyard Wind?
Yeah, I believe that was just one blade. So one blade fell or dismembered, and it fell into the ocean. The fiberglass particles really, this is incredible, right? How much it moved throughout the entire Cape Cod and Nantucket region. They shut down the beaches. There's little trash cans on the beach saying, if you see fiberglass, put it into this little bucket, right? Like this was the peak of summer. I can't imagine. Look, you close down a beach, in a beach town in the peak of summer. That's pretty frightening. So, right, this is just one blade, right? We have 190 being proposed in New Jersey, so it could be disastrous. There's videos and pictures out of wind turbines catching fire. It's crazy that they are pushing this. There are so many better ways to get clean, good energy.
And a wind turbine blade is about the size of a football field, right? I believe. That's insane.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think I've also read, Christine, you would know that if they did instruct the people that if you did come across some of the debris from the turbine blade, they, contact the officials because, we have to come and pick it up. And they were in like hazmat suits.
Yes.
Yeah.
The other problem is as the fiberglass gets smaller, it gets picked up by shellfish. So it's going to affect the fishing industry.
Right.
Because now you are going to find fiberglass in your shellfish. A very scary thought.
Right. And then we're ultimately going to consume it as well.
Yep.
Like microplastics.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If microplastics weren't enough to worry about, now you got to worry about fiberglass. So, yeah, crazy.
I understand your opponent is a ranking member of the Committee on Energy and Commerce in the U.S. Congress. He voted no for the Hands Off Our Home Appliances Act, which passed in the U.S. House. What this bill was designed to do is to ensure new energy conservation standards must be technologically feasible and economically justified, and that the consumer must not be made to bear undue cost. What are your feelings on this issue, and how would you vote?
I mean, look, if you look at the actual energy output of a gas stove or something like that, it is so minuscule and so small. I love cooking on gas stoves. I think it makes the best food. Hands off my gas stove, right? This is total government and federal infringement. Mm-hmm. So I'm excited to, have common sense practices. I mean, if you take a look at who our climate czar is in this country, right? He owns multiple private planes, right? John Kerry. So, he's flying all over the world on taxpayer dollars, polluting it 20 times more than your gas stove would ever do it in its lifetime. So this is just going to be a burden for for homeowners and taxpayers, right? These electric stoves or whatnot they want to install are going to be 2 to 3 times the cost. I'm a new homeowner. I've been in my house for 3 years. We did get a new stove. It was mediocrely, expensive, right? It was a couple $100, close to $1,000. I didn't buy a, super high end, top of the line one for a couple thousand. But if you wanted to buy an electric version of that, right, it's 2 to 3 times the price. So let's keep the federal government out of that and let them maybe worry about their own emissions before they start forcing it down ours.
What's that saying? It's not for you or me. How's that go? It's very hypocritical. That's basically
rules for thee, but not for me.
That's it. That's it.
I might have got that backwards. Yes.
So also, also dealing with the environment, your opponent, Congressman Pallone, voted nay to repeal Section 134 of the Clean Air Act relating to the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. The fund provides financial and technical assistance to states and other eligible recipients to help enable low-income and disadvantaged communities to carry out activities to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The vote passed in the House with all but one Republican voting against it. What are your thoughts on this act, and would you vote with your Republican colleagues?
Look, I think the Clean Air Act, right? A lot of that has to do with carbon capture. And if you talk to people really in the nitty gritty of the energy industry, right, carbon capture essentially is the biggest scam out on the planet. Look, I read recently, right, Pennsylvania is actually a net negative of an entire state, right? They pump out less carbon than they bring in, right? Our forests, our trees, our plant life, and even in the marine life, algae and all that stuff, right? That reduces carbon output, right? We need to plant more trees, right? Earth Day wasn't all that wrong 30 years ago when we started pushing this, right? Plant trees. That is a good way to do it. In urban and low-income communities, right, they're typically very dense populations without trees and forests. Typically, the urban household is a low carbon emitting household, right? It's the ultra rich that have sprawling mansions or flying private jets and whatnot, right? Which ironically is most politicians. So, right, like let's focus on how to actually move the needle, which is the ultra wealthy, not the low income, right? As I talked about earlier, if we put offshore wind here, utility bills are going to go up 40%. That's going to hit the low income far greater than anybody else, right? And when they're struggling to put food on their table and pay daycare and et cetera, to have a utility bill that goes up 40%, it's just ridiculous. So, I would fight hard on clean energy here.
Yeah, it sounds like they're squeezing the middle class, right? What more can we do to eliminate the middle class or,
And they're forcing you to use more electricity. So, of course, somebody's making money out of this. If we're forced to use electricity and the electricity bills go up, who's making the money? Which politicians are on the take?
Right.
Exactly.
A joint resolution passed the House in March of 2024 expressing the sense that a carbon tax on business would harm the U.S. economy. Of course, your opponent voted against this resolution. How do you feel about the government imposing a carbon tax on businesses?
It's just going to hurt small businesses more and more, right? I come from a manufacturing background where I run a cheese plant, as funny as that sounds, right? I get invited to a lot of parties. I'm a cheese guy, right? Look, my factory uses energy. And if we had to start, counting our carbon tax credits, right, we're going to hire an additional accountant on that. We are going to put a staff on that, right? All of those costs that are going to be absorbed into the small business is just going to be passed on to the consumer, right? And we as consumers are just going to pay more and more. So, I already mentioned that I thought, carbon capture was kind of a scam, right? And the big energy companies are all doing this because there's just government subsidies and government handouts. So when ExxonMobil and Occidental Petroleum, install billion-dollar carbon capture facilities, they're reaping $5 billion in tax credits back. So, hey, it's $4 billion net gain for us. This is great, right? It's just playing the system, right? And this is typical bureaucratic policies that are just asinine.
Right. So the small business owners are pawns as well as the consumers.
Yep. Yep.
So in the past, the U.S. has been a leader in energy, but that has been put at risk by the Inflation Reduction Act, jeopardizing our development of oil and gas resources by making changes to existing leases and new standards for lease approval. Your Republican colleagues in the House and 3 Democrats passed the Restoring American Energy Dominance Act that would protect oil and gas development and existing leases. Do you see this act as important, and why so?
Absolutely. Look, American energy independence is of paramount importance, right? We were the largest energy producer. We are the largest energy producing country on earth. And we've kind of taken a position, specifically led by my opponent here, Frank Pallone, to limit exports, right? The more you export, the more you make, which is cheaper for us domestically, right? Our strategic petroleum reserves are at, 30, 40-year lows. We have like a 56-day supply, right? Just last week, a major hurricane devastated the southeastern United States. There's a couple more brewing. And right, if the grids fail, right, which could happen in a 2024 type year where hacking, right, we've already seen a pipeline get hacked. If the grids fail and the energy supply shuts off, well, we only have 56 days of total energy left. It's absolutely important to put, large reserves in there, right? These are strategic reserves in case crazy things happen. And in a year like 2024, crazy things happen every single week. So, look, I'm a big proponent of putting a lot of energy production in. I'm not talking about drilling for oil off the coast of New Jersey, right? But it's talking about using federal lands that, whether that's the Gulf of Mexico or other federal lands that are well-established oil or gas producing areas, to continue to do that. We, as a country, export a lot of energy. LNG, right, is kind of the energy of the future for Europe and a lot of Asia and parts like that. Well, Frank Pallone tried to stop LNG exports. Well, if we don't export LNG, who's going to do it? Russia, Iran, right? Countries like that are going to be doing it. So that just gets them further into dependence, right? And setting up the next thing you know, they're setting up military bases because, oh, well, we supply you energy. Why don't we give you a better deal on that? We'll put a military base there.
Right.
So yeah, for our country's sake, we absolutely need to be energy independent. And I look forward to doing more energy here in the United States. This past administration has been very against it, and we're excited for 2024 and the future administration of 2025.
Now I'm going to be handing it off to Christine, and she'll be discussing the topic of immigration.
Well, now that we mentioned national security, our current U.S. policy for immigration seems to be a threat to national security. What are your thoughts on the immigration policy we currently have and perhaps how it could be fixed?
Yeah, look, I am cognizant that this entire country was built on immigrants, right? All 4 of my grandparents came to this country.
And so did
but
mine.
They did come to the country. Yep, great. Right? But they did come to this country legally, right? And the vetting process needs to absolutely occur, right? Our southern border, even our northern border, which doesn't get talked about nearly enough, is ripe with illegals crossing daily, right? The government of the Biden and Harris administration has made it so easy to come into this country, right? They have an app for it, that CB1 app. So, look, I am aware that the immigration system is a disaster, right? I know plenty of people that are first-generation Americans that waited decades to come here, spent tens of thousands of dollars in lawyers and federal bureaucracy and paperwork. And then they finally get to come. And then they turn on Fox News, even maybe MSNBC, and see a wide open border wall where they come in and we hand them a credit card and we give them a place to live. And that is so frightening, right? How we need to be able to vet these people. And we should be selective with who's coming into this country, right? Do they have a job? Will they have a job? Do they add and contribute to the society? Will they be paying into the taxpayer system? Will they just be a burden here? Right, if you get into the nitty gritty of who's coming in, right, it's not just Central and South Americans. There's large populations from Turkey, large populations from China, and all over the world. So that's frightening, right? 34,000 Chinese nationals crossed the border in just the Baja California area alone, year to date, right? You could fill up half of Giant Stadium with the Chinese nationals that have, tried to get into or are coming into this country. So we absolutely need immigration reform, and I'm excited to secure our border and get the right reforms here where we can get the right people in. It's frightening, right? I read a report just last week of how many people have committed that have come into this country have committed sexual assault, homicide, violence, right? So, look, does the Republican Party talk about some of the monstrosities here? Sure, right? But some of that is really true, right? And we need to be ultra selective of who's coming into this country, make sure that the right people are coming in.
And I agree with you. And of course, we have to be careful because we're a target for terrorism, as 9/11 proved. So I can see that securing our border is important to U.S. safety, as you do. Once again, Congressman Pallone voted against the Police Our Border Act, a bill requiring a report by the Attorney General of the impact of the border crisis is having on law enforcement and the federal, state, and local levels. What are your thoughts on this bill?
Look, I think someone that is in this country illegally, right, and has tried to get asylum, that commits a crime in this country should be thrown out, right? That is common sense.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, you came here, we allowed you to be here, and now you broke a law. Get out, right? And it seems that other countries, this is common sense, right? Even the Dominican Republic did it with Haiti last week, right? And they are deporting tens of thousands of Haitians every single week, right? And that's a shared island of Hispaniola. So yeah, I'm excited to have common sense practices like this. Hey, you came here, you broke the law, time for you to go. Why would we waste more government resources and more cost to the taxpayer keeping you here, putting you into jail, or just slapping you on the wrist and saying, "Oh, by the way, here's your extra $2,000 a month stipend." But yeah, continue to break the law. This is not conservative rhetoric. This is common sense. So I'm proud to stand for common sense principles here.
And just to point out, your opponent once again voted against the Detain and Deport Illegal Aliens Who Assault a Cop Act. So I'm sure you would have supported this bill wholeheartedly to deport aliens who assaulted police officers.
Absolutely, common sense, right? I've been endorsed by the Fraternal Order of the Police Organization. My cousin's a cop right in my district. A lot of my best friends are cops. I have the most respect for these guys. They're putting their lives on the line every single day for us, keeping us safe, right? And the least we can do as potential politicians, right, is have their back. So I'm proud to back the blue and support our police and give them the resources and the protections they need, right? But the federal government needs to work with them. I've read about horror stories that the federal government isn't processing on a federal level, right? It's all being pushed back to the state and municipal level, right? Which is overburdening them. So, yeah, excited to fight that on the federal level for my boys in blue and girls.
Okay. So I was also distressed to learn that your opponent opposed the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act. And that would provide a bill to be passed that requires individuals to provide documentary proof of U.S. citizenship before they are legally allowed to register to vote. Right now, if you apply for federal services, any kind of food stamps, you are given a voting registration form. Somebody first coming to this country might not understand that filling that out and actual voting before you're a citizen is an illegal act. But just the fact that it's required that it be handed out is not safeguarding our vote. So how do you feel about this act? And should we have passed this act that only U.S. citizens should vote? And should we check? Because the Democrats are saying that there's no need to check. It rarely ever happens.
Yeah, look, again, common sense principles here. You absolutely need to be an American citizen to vote. The fact that you can vote without showing ID in this country is insane, right? Election
Yeah.
day should be a federal holiday. And right, I think 190 countries around the world are required to show voter ID on election day.
So now Dominique is going to be addressing the topic of business and the economy.
So you mentioned that you work in the business sector in the cheese industry. Could you tell us a little bit more about your profession?
Sure. So yeah, I run a cheese factory where we cut, grade, shred, and cube about 15 million pounds of cheese. The factory is down in Lakewood, New Jersey. Yeah, it's a rewarding and exhausting and daunting career to run a manufacturing facility. Right? We have lots of employees, about 100 people down there. It's a great cross collaboration between automation, right, and human labor skill. Right, we buy $1 million machines, and we also have people that cut 10,000 pounds of cheese a day. Right, the joke I make all the time is you wouldn't want to arm wrestle any guy in my plant. Right, they will win. They are pretty strong people, and we've been fortunate enough to have some employees for over 25 years. So they're insanely skilled. We do a lot of imported cheeses, right, and cheeses from Europe like Parmesan and Manchego and Gouda and Brie from France, etc. And I've had this unique position where I've gotten to see imported ingredient statements against domestic ingredient statements over the last 15 years of my career, right? And it's really frightening what we are doing in our U.S. food system. I am a big proponent of Make America Healthy Again. So I'm very cognizant that when you guys open up your fridge, you'll be hard pressed to find 10 items that aren't wrapped in plastic, right? As a giant manufacturer of cheese, right? I put cheese into a plastic cup. I put cheese into a plastic bag. And I meet with some of the largest, food companies or plastic companies on earth. And I say, where are we at? Sustainability. What do we got? And these are I'm meeting with the heads of these companies and hey, we're decades away, right? We're nowhere near this. I would love the federal government to put subsidies in place where you can put, responsible packaging like glass. Hey, government, I need to buy a whole new $1 million cup line that I'm now going to use glass jars instead of plastic. Help me out with this cost. This is good for the environment.
Right.
Give me a $100,000 grant for $1 million machine and get that return on investment to be quicker, incentivizing me to do so. Right. So these are just common sense practices that I'm excited to fight for. I think our food system is disastrous, right? The FDA and what they allow in our food system is really, really shocking. So I'm excited to be a fresh voice in Congress, specifically on the food system, right, and making America healthy again. We need to move away from pharmaceutical companies. They're in cahoots with the hospitals, right? The whole system is designed to make you sick, and they
Yeah.
want you to be sick for a long time so they get really, really paid. We need to get off those medicines and just be healthy, right? When an arborist sees a sick tree, what does he do? He checks the soil, right? He doesn't go check the leaves, right? It's what's going into that tree. So the human body is just like that. What goes into us, needs to be the right healthy stuff. And I fear for our children and our grandchildren's sake of our food system.
I couldn't agree more. I think I just read also an article that someone had done an autopsy recently on a patient, and they actually found microplastics in the brain tissue of
Very
that.
scary.
Yep.
Yeah. So I couldn't agree more. We need to get back down to the basics and just get away from being ultra processed. Everyone, it's about maintaining having chronic illnesses in this country.
Yep.
One of the issues many Americans are concerned about is the state of our economy. What do you see as the problem facing small businesses?
I think just rising costs, right? Rising costs. I mean, look, I went to I had a big rally at my office on Saturday morning, and we had about 20 people. I went next door to the bagel shop and picked up a dozen donuts or a dozen bagels, excuse me, and some cream cheese and butter. And literally, the three people that were in line in front of me, each one of them made a comment about the costs, right? And the girl behind the counter says, "I haven't seen you in a while," and he pointed to the menu. And he's like, I can only come once a week now. I can't afford this. He ordered a small coffee and a bagel with cream cheese. It was over $12.
That's
Right. So
insane.
that's like insane.
Yeah.
Right. So I think the best thing that we can do for economy is tamper inflation. Right. And what leads to inflation is government spending. Right. The government continues to print money and spend money recklessly. Right. I'm a proud to sign the National Taxpayers Union, where I will not sign more taxes for us. Right here in New Jersey, it is one of the most cost expensive states to live in. No, sorry, it's one of the most costly states to live in.
Yeah.
So I pay my fair share of taxes like all of you and my constituents do. So the government needs to do their part and start managing a budget accordingly. Stop spending the money. I mean, our veterans get $3 billion annually when illegal aliens get $35 billion, right? And that's
So
that's
infuriating.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So also, the Refrigerator Freedom Act and the Unaffordable Dishwasher Standards Act appeared before the last legislative session that sought to limit the Department of Energy to prescribe or enforce energy conservation standards for refrigerators, refrigerator freezers, and dishwashers. The incumbent Congressman Pallone voted against this act along with his fellow Democrats. What are your thoughts on this issue?
Same thing with my gas stove. Keep your hands off of it. Let us make our. I mean, this is just silly, democratic, greenwashing. It's so silly, right? Like dishwashers. That's really what's good. Look, hey, you guys in New Jersey, right? We moved away from plastic bags. Okay, now you moved away from plastic straws. You guys ever walked into the Costco and bought a case of water? Right? There's like 3 truckloads of water sitting there in plastic bottles, right? But the straws are really where you draw the line, right? Let's incentivize the large companies to do the right things. It's not about my dishwasher. It's about John Kerry getting on a private jet 17 times a year to fly all over the country to give a speech about green energy. Right? Let's do it the right way. It's ridiculous.
I'll say asinine. Can I say that? Asinine.
So, lastly, I'd like to talk about the proposal of term limits. And I have read that you intend to serve no more than 12 years in office because you believe in term limits. Can you explain why you see term limits as a benefit to democracy?
Absolutely. Look, I think term limits are important, right? It is pretty insane that career politicians exist, right? In my quick 10 months, 11 months exposure into the political world, right? I mean, look, it is a quid pro quo society where certain lobbyist groups back you and help fund your campaigns. I mean, take a look at my opponent, right? He's gotten donations from Pfizer. He's gotten donations from McDonald's. He gets donations from Raytheon and Lockheed Martin, right? It keeps that war machine burning still. So, right, he is incentivized to do as what their plan is. I think that term limits allows fresh perspectives to constantly come into office. Look, I love term limits. I want to put it forward, right? And I say this comment all the time. On day one, I'm going to walk into Congress and I'm going to say, hey, I'm Scott. I'm your new freshman congressman. Here's term limits, right? That is not going to pass. No one's going to go for that. Right? But if I went in on day 2 and I said, hey, I'm Scott. I'm your freshman congressman. I'm back. Term limits. You're all grandfathered in. That could pass, right? Like, it's unfortunately the self-serving interests of their own. Okay, well, this helps our grandchildren. This helps our children, right? So it's baby steps. It's not the immediate answer we want, but that's compromise, and that's how DC needs to get things done, right? And that's finding that middle ground. So I'm a big proponent of not having the political machine fund you for your entire political career. I think that right, we are a country that is of the people, by the people, for the people, right? And representatives should not be career politicians that have just made an entire career leading and serving. So hey, do your 10 years, do your 12 years, get out, go do something else, right? Contribute to society in other ways. Take a state level, take a different federal level, open up a business, right? Employ somebody for once, not just spend money recklessly. So yeah, I'm excited to be there no longer than 12 years. Right, that's 2 terms for a senator and 6 terms for a congressman. think that's fair and reasonable amount of time. You can get a lot of things done in those periods. So very excited to put term limits in play. And I would imagine it could pan out just the way I thought it would. Hey, term limits, get out of here, Scott, right? You crazy freshman. But, hey, I'm back, term limits. You're all grandfathered in. And again, that could work. So I'm excited to try to put something like that together. That's, again, just common sense stuff.
Yeah. Because it seems like, people that have been in there as career politicians, whatever values they may have had in the beginning, they become compromised by all the lobbyists and everyone that's funding them, right?
It seems to be.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, Scott, is there anything else you would like to address our audience about and what you stand for in your campaign that we haven't covered?
Yeah, look, it's a campaign of common sense, right? And it's just doing the right things for our country and for our people here in the 6th District of New Jersey. There are a lot of issues important to people, but let's stop voting for these career politicians. Let's vote for change. We're not on a good track right now. I had no great ambitions of becoming a politician, right? Dominique, we were on a bus together in high school. You kind of know me in high school that you're like, well, that guy's going to be a politician one day. Like, it never crossed my mind. But like the events that have occurred over the last 4 to 5 years, you can see how the government infringes. Look at the COVID lockdowns, right? That was one. I was in Europe on October 7th, and I'm traveling with a lot of Jewish people, right? And I watched them take off their Stars of David for fear of Holocaust 2.0. Pretty scary and frightening stuff. What my defining moment was on January 2nd, 2024 here this year. And I read the congressional stock trading, and I saw how much money these politicians were making. Clearly, inside information. So it's really frightening. And the whole system is kind of designed to, keep us unintelligent, keep us down, keep us poor, right? And asking the government for help, right? Like, hi, I'm the government and I'm here to help you, right? Those are the most, 8, 9 scariest words in the human language. Like, let us be, right? Let us run our businesses. Let us live our lives. If you want to inform us, great, right? But that's it. Inform us. Do not push us and make us do things. So I respect the Constitution. I'm a man of common sense. And I'm excited for the next 30 days leading up to Election Day. I think we have a terrific opportunity this year. And I'm excited to take down Frank Pallone and bring real change to the 6th District. So that's it. My website is Fegler2024.com. Fegler. I know it rolls off the tongue, but yep, that's it. FEGLR. And check us out on social media. Check us out all over the place.
Eddie will definitely post it up on the screen so everyone can check it out.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great.
So you felt compelled, to get out there. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, 2 years ago, I had a friend that ran for Congress, and I admired what he did and that achievement. He didn't make it very far, unfortunately. But I said to myself, wow, what an achievement. What else can I do beside donate to his campaign or knock on doors or vote, right? If you want something done right, do it yourself kind of a mentality. So, I jumped into it and I said, sure, I'll run for Congress. We've had a great primary. We got almost 82% of the vote. And we're expecting a very, very close race. It's not getting picked up in mainstream. They think it's a shoo-in for Frank Pallone, but I'm confident on Election Day it'll be a very, very close race. So the people are upset. The independents, I think, are really starting to shift gears and understanding our values. I've had a lot of people from the RFK Jr. campaign that are very interested in my race, specifically with the food background I have. And these are, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, these were hardcore Democrats, right? And they've really switched sides to saying, this is the party of common sense. What can we do? Scott could be a big asset to RFK if we get Trump elected. So, excited for the next 30 days and hope I plan on taking a nice long nap on Election Day after I go vote.
So we just want, like we said, we're November 5th is the Election Day. And just please get out there and vote. And as mentioned before, early voting is encouraged. Here are the early voting dates. We're going to post them up as well. It's been a pleasure having you on the podcast, Scott. Really, I commend you for everything that you've done and what you're continuing to do. It's just amazing. Please leave us your comments, like and subscribe, share the video, and let's spread the word. Thank you for watching the podcast. It's not easy being green.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.